Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Hey, it's Friday night, and it's the Unfiltered experience with myself, Christopher Rausch, and
Scott Goyette.
What's going on, brother Scott? Welcome to Friday night, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Every single week, put it on your calendar. You'll never miss it. We're always here live, bringing you the value, bringing you the unfiltered conversations. And tonight, we have a special treat for you tonight. It's just me and Scott. Just us and you in a great conversation, talking about something that everybody's experienced in their life. So we're going to jump into that for a second. But how's your week, man?
It's good, dude. That question gets deeper and deeper and deeper every single week we get into this, and that's what's leading us up to today's topic. It's interesting, like we're responding to so many people who are going through so much, us included, and I feel like there's no free minute just to sit back and say things are good. Like when I find somebody who has nothing going on, I start like holding on to them. I corner them and I'm like, keep telling me more. Cause it's almost like they're like, yeah, I have nothing bad in my life. I'm like, talk to me, give it to me.
Like, how do you do that? Where does this come from?
Yeah.
You have the secret power.
Yeah.
How do you not think about anything? I'm like, I'll ask people like, what are you thinking about? They're like, nothing. And I'm like, how do you do that? I don't know how to think about nothing. I think about 9,000 things at once.
Yeah, so I feel like people are struggling with so much right now, and the few people who don't have something huge on their plate, I like to take little breaks with them just to feel their energy that's free of trauma, stress, or whatever. But leads us to the more important piece. So many of us are going through something right now, and whether it seems minute or huge, but for you it's a big deal. Everybody's got something, and I think we need to chat about that and help people through those processes. That's why we're here tonight.
Big time. And we talk about it all the time in our shows and the coaching and everything. We talk about how to deal with the negative situations and the negative sides of life. But I think it was really important for us to do this show right now. And really, you and I have had these discussions about, what's gone on in the last 18 months and really thinking about, people have talked to me. I posted a few times this week about loss. And we're not just talking about loss of loved ones. We're talking about loss of job, loss of identity, loss of friendships, loss of certainty, loss in general. Like people say, I've lost my will to do this. I've lost my mind. I've lost this. And so I think tonight's discussion is going to be great because there's a couple questions in thinking about this. I actually thought about this one, Scott. Normally I don't think about our shows too much, but I did think about this one just as I was going about my daily business and really thinking about, okay, what can we do and say that's different and apart from what we said before, and really honing in on the loss aspect, So I really want to dive into that tonight and think about the different aspects of loss, because I think personally it all ties into a few core essentials that if we can help people realize and shift their perspective about that, they can walk away from this conversation at least having a little bit deeper understanding perhaps of the power of their mind and what it is that they focus on. So yeah. And so if you guys are with us either live or on the replay, thank you guys so much for being here and spending your Friday nights with us. This is going to be an impactful conversation. So if it strikes you, please share this out. We want to impact as many people as we possibly can. Obviously, there's a lot of shifting going on in the world and the universe. And as much as each one of us can do to put out good vibrations and good energy and help heal the planet, the better off we'll all be. So we got Teresa's in the house. She says, hello, what's up? Good evening over there in Georgia. Hope you guys are awesome and doing well. We got Monique in the house. Monique's telling Mom, get over here. We got the Unfiltered experience Friday night. We got you guys have been religious ever since you saw the other show. So thank you guys for being here. We appreciate you. Susan's in the house. What's up, Susan? Thank you so much for being here. I know this will definitely impact you as well. And then we got Scott in the house. He says, hey, hi, Christopher, and hi, Scott. So as always, one of the things that Scott and I really love about this show and love about you guys is that this is a conversation between us. You guys are here. We're at a coffee shop. We're at a bar. We're having a conversation. You guys chime in with what's going on in your life, some suggestions that you got. Let's make this a real-time conversation. So, Scott, what's calling to you when you think about this conversation and how you want to kick it off?
So the first thing I would like to say, and this is probably the most difficult part of loss, is that loss is part of the circle of life. It's part of the cycle of what we're doing here in existence. So with loss, there's a space, and in that space, something new comes. So growth comes with loss. And a lot of times we see that loss as this, really bad thing. We're like, but that was part of who I am. That was part of my identity. That person was this, that job was this, that animal was this, that time I spent there was so important. And it's part of the process. It's part of the process of us moving and us growing. So whenever we lose something, there's a space created for what's next. And that space will not fill up with the right thing if we don't process that loss. I don't want to say correctly, in the right way, in a heartfelt way.
Sure.
And there's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but we've got to do it in a heartfelt way and allow the next thing to be an even more beautiful part of the story, without saying that came before didn't matter, because not only does it matter, it's a part of the story that gets us to today, but let's explore throughout this hour that space and what we can allow and encourage to flow into that space, that whatever it was that we lost would most likely want to fill that space. So is it a person? Is it an animal? Is it a former job that was a stepping stone for us to be better? What does that space look like now that that's moved out? And it could be a sad conversation, a heartbreaking conversation, one that doesn't feel good, but it's part of this world that we live in today, and we can do something about it or we can't. So that's where we're at.
I love the summation on that, man. I love the focus and the intention of what it is that you want to accomplish, because it's right up the same alley as I want to. I really want, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about the word loss, right? And that's something I want to jump into in a second, because I just really want to pick that apart for a minute. But the first question I have is, I want to lead off with a bit of a story for both of us. Tell me about a time in your life, not related to human loss, but some point in your life, your career, whatever it might be, where you lost, and that's when you gained a really valuable lesson out of that.
You know, we've got so many, each of us. Give me a second to think about that. Let me think about that so I can be intentional. This is what's fun about the show too. Like, we don't tell each other what's going to happen. So if something ever seems remotely articulate, it's just flowing in the moment. And if it doesn't, then it is what it is.
Then we laugh about it.
Yeah, no, it's good to think.
Yeah. Yeah, we like to catch each other off guard and just like because that's when you really kind of like, okay, what's speaking to me right now? Like, I could ask you the question before, you're like, oh, this is a good one to tell.
Well, here's the deal. I mean, I actually have what I'm doing right now is I can go to the obvious one where I literally lost my life, and I can sit here and talk about where I fell through a glass table and I just start over. But I've spoken about that too many times. I want to see if there's something deeper that I've been missing. So I'm being intentional with this.
Good.
So here's what I'll say. I'll say this. When I moved from Boston, the Boston area, to Texas, I lost relationships because, the friends that I had at the time, we were super close. So the people that I connected with, we were super close. And my brain was always a wandering brain. I was a gypsy by nature. I'm like, let's do what's next. Let's go. I, for whatever reason, understand that life is a journey from day one, where everyone else is like, you should do this, you should study, you're supposed to do this. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, I'm going. And I understood how to jump into the river and feel that flow and not attach to the tree as I talk about it. So when I left Boston, relationships broke down. People start the judgmental thing, oh, what are you too good for us because you're traveling around the country? Oh, you're in grad school, or you think you're something special. And there was this weird shift with certain, friends and people back at home. And so I lost a lot of my identity of what I was, because I'm, a person who grew up in Boston. These are my friends. This is who we are. Almost kind of like you saw in Good Will Hunting, if you've seen the movie, when like people start shifting and there's growth and somebody takes a different few steps up the ladder. At some point, there's going to be a move and you upgrade and when I say upgrade, I don't mean upgrade friends by any means. You upgrade and change your frequency and your vibration. Those friends are still friends for life. I mean, I would do anything for any one of them. Like, that's never changed. But the way we view the world has changed. So conversation and communication becomes harder. So to answer that question, the biggest transition was moving to a new place, saying, I'm going to upgrade my identity. It doesn't affect any way I see other people. It's just, this is for me, for my growth. And in doing that, you lose a lot of weight. You lose a lot of weight spiritually, mentally, physically. I was already running around like crazy, so I don't lose any physical weight, but you lose a lot of weight. And so that would be my answer, to that question. What about you? What about you on that one?
You know what? What's funny is because I had the precursor of knowing that I was going to ask that question. So I actually had thought about a few different situations in my life. And of course, there's been various situations. My first divorce was a huge loss. I lost friends. I lost the first person in my life that really loved me and cared about me for who I was. That was a huge loss. Had other different losses over the years. But the thing I want to talk about, I think today that really keeps speaking to me is the fact that I know that so many people are going through this is like you just said, the loss of identity. When I lost my corporate position back in November of 2019, when effectively I went in and the day before I knew myself as this certain person with these certain sets of responsibilities, this certain role, the title, certain expectations, certain certainties, certain beliefs, certain visions of everything. I had so many different things in my mind built upon having that corporate position. And then, within a couple of hours of the morning of November 7th, I was left completely like literally you look at a filing cabinet in my brain of 26 years and somebody just went in and just opened all the drawers and just took everything out. And it was just like, okay, there's the file labels, but now you have to make sense of what all that was and what all that meant. And that journey for me, Scott, was one that that at first I was excited about and eager to experience. But after the newness wore off and after I started realizing, oh my God, that is a huge part of my life that has just ultimately just been severed. It felt like I lost a big part of me. It's like I lost some sort of aspect of Christopher that now I needed to find and fill that void. But what I realized through that process, and you know that because we've been friends ever since that pretty much happened, is that process, that journey, instead of, of course we have the normal human reactions to it. It's like, oh me, what did I do? What did I say? What could I have done differently? Play Monday morning quarterback for a while. You wonder, geez. And then you start going through that analogy, like, okay, was I really this person to that person? Was I really this person to this person? Was it all just a big lie? Was I just fooling myself? You start going down that rabbit hole of disbelief, and you start creating pictures and images in your life that really aren't true or factual. So for me, in that little bit of a spiral that I knew I had to take, because you know me, I'm sick. I'm like, okay, I want to go through this so that I can experience it, so that when somebody else is going through it, I can say, listen, I've been there. I've been there. I've taken that drive going, oh my God, what am I going to do? And realizing like, what is the one thing that we can always do? We can always just stop and get in that moment and realize what we're grateful for. And from that experience, as time has moved on, and as I've looked at that as a gift, one of the biggest gifts of my life, the universe said, hey, Chris, you've been talking about doing all these other things, buddy. We've been giving you some signposts. We've been giving you some signposts. Here we are. We mean this. We want you to jump. We really want you to jump. And through that process and that journey, I've grown so much that even when I think back to that person who I was, it's like I sit there and I look at them and I'm like, yeah, I wish you well, because I have gained so much more insight about what the true importance of life really is. And it is, and what I talk about all the time is in those moments. And was I spending my moments correctly and accurately and effectively in the things that would build my legacy? A little bit, but I wasn't certainly spending any time with Jackson. I was on the road and everything else. So when I lost that, what I did gain in thinking about loss is I gained myself back. I gained my sense of purpose. I gained my sense of groundedness in the fact that, no, I don't need to be a certain thing or a certain person to any particular entity or anything. I just need to be myself. And when you find that freedom within yourself, and you know this, Scott, when you find that freedom, all the other things that used to matter, the titles and the material options and everything else, start fading away. I'm so less materialistic and idea and goal driven and money driven. I used to have all these dreams, like I want this and I want this. Now I just want freedom, simplicity, the ability to impact people, the ability to have life and health and enjoy my family every single minute. You can take the rest of it away. And that's really what I've learned out of this, is I was always striving to gain more, to get more, to be more happier with more stuff. And it doesn't come from that. It comes from that inner peace of knowing who you really are in those moments. And I know that journey continues to unfold for me, but that's really the one thing that was speaking to me is, again, what you said is that identity. And I think it's so interesting. How do we help ourselves get out of that identity crisis before it happens? What do you think?
So I like one thing that I like a lot of things that you just said, but the one, and I'm going to answer that question. I love the fact that time was freed up, because when I listen to you talk and I hear the things that really, really matter, it always comes back to you being a better parent and breaking cycles from things that happen with your mom, not blaming, not taking away love for your mom, because you clearly love her and you don't blame her. But you said that, Mom, it's not a pattern in our family. It's a pattern that you've accepted that I'm not accepting. So this free time has really allowed you to focus and grow with Jackson while doing everything else you're saying, going through some struggles, having things happen so you can be a better coach and help people eliminate the excuses. So that brings us to the question about identity. So we go into an identity crisis, and I talk about this all the time. Once you find your purpose, your mission, your why, I always call that your balance point. And so on this arm, we'll call it our identity. On this arm, we'll say our vision, our goals, our trajectory. and everything in our core is our mission or our purpose. So once you tighten up your mission or purpose, which for me is very simple, I'm a person who helps those who are struggling or have lost hope find their brilliance and share it with the world. That's it. That's who I am. So when I can say that succinctly time after time after time, I can use different vehicles. So those vehicles sit on this arm. This could be this podcast. This could be my coaching. This could be our group coaching. This could be my teaching at the college. This could be any time where I'm out sharing my brilliance to help people who've lost hope or struggling, period. So that's going to tighten this. This other piece is my identity. This is first grade, second grade, all the way through graduate school, all the classes I've taken, everybody telling me who I am. And I'm like, I'm Scott Goyette. I've got an MBA. I'm relatively smart. I'm an athlete, blah, 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 bullshit. And so all those pieces that I define, here's what I really am. I'm a person who's massively empathetic, who doesn't always have the ability to zip up, who wants to change the world and wants to share so much with everybody else, and sometimes needs to put more into me so I can have my cup overflow. Even though that's what I teach, I don't always do it. So here's my suggestion for identity crisis. Tighten up your mission, your purpose. If you can't do it on your own, get a coach. If you can do it on your own, do it, but get deep into this, because once this is tight, when you start wiggling because your goals change and your identity starts shifting, you won't tip over because this is solid. But here's what's going to happen. These pieces are going to come in and you're going to say, I lost my job. I lost a family member. I lost an animal. I lost part of who I thought I was. And this shifts. Then our vehicles, our vision, everything else shifts. So we have to adjust. The more solid the mission, the more solid the purpose, the easier to deal with. Will it always be easy? No. Will it be adjustable and able to be moved through? 100%. And will the outcome be absolutely insanely beautiful because you're uncovering the real you? Yes, yes, yes. And so that's my answer. I'm sticking to it. I'm going with that.
I love it, brother. I love it.
I can't repeat that, but that's what I'm going with.
No, I love it. I just want to acknowledge some of the people in the house here. We got Brian Keith in the house. He says, keep up the kick-ass work, you guys. Have a great 4th weekend. You too, Brian. Thank you for all you're doing as well. He also said, very well said, Scott. Even though it's hard, it must be done. Yes, yes, yes. Nellie's in the house. She says, what's up, peeps? Laura Cobb's in the house. She says, sup? Margaret says, great point, using loss around friendships. Absolutely. I mean, I look at those, Margaret, as situations like, they're chapters in a life. And sometimes, you have to wish them well. But at the same time, if any of them called in the second, like, hey, Chris, I need your help. Like, I'm right there, 20 years difference. Let's go do it. But I'm not going to hang around those people necessarily every day because they're on a different journey than I am. But it doesn't negate the fact that we've been through great stuff. Laura says, what I love about Ben Affleck and Matt Damon is Ben Affleck knows that he could on Matt Damon if I had a deal person at the back seat of the what the hell? Is that making any sense, or am I missing that? Oh,
I'm trying to read.
Yeah,
I'm guessing what she was probably saying is that Ben Affleck, the relationship with him and Matt Damon was he wasn't holding him back. If Matt Damon was holding himself back, I'm guessing she was like saying that he would release.
Gotcha.
Because the beauty of that whole show was so many situations someone's holding somebody back. I mean, Ben Affleck was like, Matt, go. And that's beautiful, because not all friends will do that. Like, friends recognize this is where I want to be in the journey. I'm not ready to take the jump out of the matrix. I'm where I'm at, and that's okay. And that was a beautiful explanation of how the world can work. Not everyone is ready to take the next step in the journey. And we might have been paired for a portion of a life. You always talk about it. Those people who are here for part of the journey, they were for part of the journey. Love one another, will support one another indefinitely, but one has to take the jump. One sees more and is ready to move forward, allow that growth. And that was beautiful.
Said Scott, oh my God. Yes, yes, yes.
Good guess.
Yes. Right. So when I was thinking about this also, and this is kind of one thing I want to get to, and you just kind of touched on it, really is, I'm big about words and definitions. So when I think about people saying I lost this or I lost that, what is it that they're really losing? When you think about the root of what somebody's losing, what is it that they're losing really? And how can we reframe that so it's not such, obviously it's a huge loss. We're not diminishing that in any way, shape, or form, but how can we look and really say what they've lost versus, what they've gained in that opportunity?
Yeah, and it goes back to the first statement about the space. So the minute something is perceived to be lost, well, first and foremost, is it dangling? Is it still attached to you? Is it a dangling Chad, or is it too bad Chad wasn't here right now. I'd be like, is that me? No. So, but seriously, like, is it still attached to you, or is it something that's truly, moved on? If that space has been created, now that loss is, again, it's just a movement. It's something that's moved, so we have a new space to fill that void. If it's still attached to us and we haven't let it go, that's the big issue. Let's say that we lost a job and we keep saying, I'm going to get, or a boyfriend, like this is a good one. You don't want somebody to lose somebody that got, my whole focus is getting that person back, when they clearly have no intention of coming back, or the girlfriend has no intention of coming back, or the job, they're never going to rehire you. And you're just holding on to something with yesterday. So my answer to that is, first and foremost, is it something that's lost and you've accepted the severing, so I've moved on? Or is it something that we're saying is lost, but I'm going to get it back? And here's the thing, fighting with the universe, I'm not sure you're ever going to win. So if it's something like you said, where you're like, I don't know if I'm like out for this, I don't know if this job's what I want, you knew you wanted something different. If you never took that step, eventually the universe is going to go, Chris, I'm so tired of you talking shit. It's going to kick you off the ledge and pull that job off from underneath you. So it really depends on how that loss originated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And then in terms of that, I was thinking about as well, and just thinking about different types of loss. I think like in a deeper aspect, we lose, and I was thinking about my situations in particular, is like in some situations, whether it was a death of a loved one or something else, I lost a sense of certainty. I lost a sense of comfort, safety. Like if I always had Bill here, then I lost that connection. I've lost that ability to go to somebody and ask them a question. What's going to happen to me? Sometimes we lose a piece of ourselves. We think that person comprised a component of us and that we'll never be whole again without that person or that being or that whatever is still in our life. We lose a sense of belief. It's like, oh my God, this is happening. Sense of purpose. We lose a sense of direction. Perfect. Yeah. So that's what I'm thinking. Like when somebody, like if I lose a loved one, okay, I've lost, yes, their body necessarily. We know the soul spirit.
Great question.
But so talk to me about in your perspective of that, to try to help people like, okay, you didn't lose that necessarily. And what you can gain that.
That right there, let's sit here. That's the $1 million question. Okay. So let's say right now, so if I were like right now, let's just say the worst thing in the world happened and Kim passed away. I'm going to lose the structure in my life. Okay. Yep. For the moment. Okay. I don't know who pays our bills and stuff. Like the money goes into a place and she does something and sends it off. Like there's things that I do and things that she does in the relationship. So yep. I'm going to lose that. I'm going to lose that grounding nature that exists in our house, where I'm the person who's like, we're going to do this and this and make this happen. And then she's like, center, come back. And I'm like, and even though I'm the one who does the meditations and teaches people, that's literally coming from that root. She's delivering that to me. So all that goes, I'm flying up in the air free, and I don't know how I can exist yet. And that's the growth mindset. So I would say this, if this existence is an existence where it's infinite growth for us to better ourselves as individual vessels, but more importantly, come closer to what we were as source. So you can call it God, universe, whatever. In that, whatever shows up that we perceive as missing is the next lesson. So let's say, for example, like we're playing a game and you pick up a card and it says, go 4 spaces and do blank. All it is the next card, it's the next lesson. So when something gets pulled up from underneath you, it's saying, here's the next lesson. Are some lessons easier or harder than others? Hell yeah. Mm-hmm. And so what we do is we sit and we see a lesson and we say impossible, and we shut down and say, now that person's gone, I can't exist. You're actually far more correct. I might be saying I can't exist, maybe not even so much. Let's challenge this. Is it because I love Kim so much, or am I scared shitless to live on my own?
Mm-hmm. There you go.
And I don't want to take people's loss away from them. Or was my son so amazing and I bragged how incredible he was throughout time, and when I lost my son, that now I have nothing to live for because that was the only thing that mattered to me? Or do I love my son so much? And I'm not saying that they don't have to be, they're mutually exclusive. They can coexist. I'm saying you're on point with the loss is far more than the individual, the job, the partnership. It's a lot of the things that we're losing that come with that being that job, but you're on point. And so what do we do? How do we step when that loss occurs and it's not going to turn around? How do we step up and challenge ourselves to face those lessons? Because as a collective, many of us are failing in that space.
Well, I can tell you a story that really impacted me. I came back from what I call my little sister's funeral. She was my ex-wife's sister, and for lack of better terms, she was my little sister as well. And she passed away at 33 years old in front of her 3-year-old son. And from that experience, I remember they asked me to do the eulogy at the church. And I had known Tiffany since she was a little girl. And I was driving home and I was just so mad. I'm not a religious person. And I was mad at God, and they were totally religious and everything else. And I was just like, God, and I was just so mad. And I just wanted to go home and drink and just listen to music and just process it my own way. And I was just so angry. And I'm like, and just thinking about all these different things. And all of a sudden I just stopped, Scott. I just stopped. And I looked over at the passenger seat. This is a true story. I remember I was on the 91 freeway approaching the 15, because this, I think it was her really speaking to me now looking back. And I remember looking over at the passenger seat, and I thought, if Tiffany were sitting next to me right now, what would she recommend me do? If I just came back from a horrible situation at a funeral and I'm feeling distraught and I'm feeling destructive and poor me and everything else, I want to go wallow in what I've lost and everything and how mad I am at everybody else. And thinking about okay, what would she say? What would she want me to do? And I could hear her voice. She's like, Chris, really? You're going to go home and do something stupid because I'm gone? Now I'm off and I'm free. And this is the purpose of my journey. I was supposed to be here to have Kenneth so that Tammy can raise Kenneth and have a child of her own, because she's not going to be able to have children of her own. I did this because you're going to be able to take this lesson and help so many different people, in so many different aspects of what my life meant. And so I was like, okay. And I'm like, well, what would you want me to do? And I thought about it. She's like, well, Chris, why don't you go home and call some people you haven't talked to in a while? Maybe they're close to dying and you want to say something that you may regret not saying later. Why don't you go and write a poem about me? Why don't you go and write a letter? Why don't you go, and take your dog for a walk and realize, how beautiful and precious life really is, because I never did that. And God's honest truth, when I listened to that, I was just like, you know what? If she was sitting right here, I would do it 1,000%. And I went home. I did make myself a couple of drinks, but at the same time, I wrote a poem and I called some people, or I emailed some people, and I was like, okay, this situation happened for me to learn something about myself, to grow within myself, but more importantly, be able to take the meaning and the mission and the purpose and the love that she had for kids and life, and translate that to other people, and be able to take that infectious enthusiasm that she had and broadcast that to other people. And that's something I've always just cherished in being able to do for her. And, I still mourn her loss and I still think about her being here, but at the same time, she's impacted so many people that she'll never even know about necessarily. So yeah, that's how it's helped me is trying to find, okay, how can I do this? Even with my mom and everybody else that's passed away, it's like, okay, how can I take this? How can I learn this? And then, because I know other people may not be as strong as I am, and I can help those people up when they're going through those experiences.
So you're so on point. I love what you said, and I love the way you literally looked over at the seat and visualized, and what would that person want you to do? And that's a beautiful question. And I think one of the hardest things is, you've had enough loss that by the time you sat in that space, that wasn't the first person that you loved or were connected to that passed on. So you're no rookie to the process, which is, it's a sad thing. It's a difficult thing, but it's also, to the point of you and I being coaches, it's almost this weird thing that we almost ask for it. We're like, make me have so much shit going on that I'm the best coach ever, universe. And then the universe goes, you serious? And you're like, yeah. And then you're like, I was just kidding. Is it too late? And it's like, so to the point, what about the person who has one major loss and comes in that first one and then just hits this massive roadblock? Because, some of us are a little more seasoned and conditioned to just start to see this stuff. But I see a lot of people who have a loss and then they say, that's it. Like, I can't get through this. And there's this beautiful space and opportunity for growth, and never to discount the loss, but there's an opportunity to really take the next step in existence. Let's talk to those people right now, because I think those are the people who need this help the most. And if they're not on this show listening right now, somebody listening knows one of those people. And so let's give them some artillery to support. What does it look like on the first loss? Like, what is it for a person to get from, I just lost the job, I just got divorced, I lost a parent or a really good friend, and I can't go on. what do we do at this space right now to support? Like, what do we tell those people? Like, what are some of the things that they can do so that at this point we can move forward? Because those can be the stuck moments that can really hold us back. And I don't know what's popping up right now as far as comments. There might be some good comments that we can tap into as well. I can put my glasses on.
Yeah, I'm gonna tap into those comments in just a second. But I think to your point in thinking about that, the thing that occurs to me the most is suffering. And it's something we don't really talk about, the term suffering, so much. But I read it. Actually, I was reading in the book that I was reading yesterday, and it talked about suffering. I'm like, that's an interesting word we don't talk about much. But suffering is usually, for me, and I don't know about you, for me, suffering is something that we choose to do. Of course, we're going to go through pain and anguish and grief and everything. That's totally normal. But I think the self-imposed suffering that's what leads us down that dark hole. And I think the first thing that people can really do is identify is, again, what would that person or what can I do in this moment that will certainly ensure the fact that I can get through this moment and get to the next moment. The first thing they could do is, number one, talk to themselves. Most people sit there and say, I can't go on with this person. I can't go on without this person. So what does their mind do? Their mind goes and figures out all the 17 reasons why they can't go on without that person. And then all that does is just consume their mind. The first thing is they have to sit there and they have to realize that I am going to get through this. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be overnight, but I'm choosing to get through this. And I choose to get through this in such a way that I can be an inspiration and leave a great legacy for my kids to watch, or however that I handle whatever loss it is. And the second thing, Scott, really is what we talk about the most, is that self-love and that self-care. My question to you is, how come so many people like take massively great care of themselves? Somebody dies and all of a sudden they just start almost like punishing themselves by not taking care of themselves, and almost like they want that misery, like they feel like they deserve misery compared to that loss. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, people's mask, everybody has a defense mechanism to loss. Some people love to attach to that misery because the fear of what would happen if I had to do this on my own, what it would look like. At least I can cling to an identity. I mean, no different than, somebody's in an abusive relationship. At least I know what to expect. I'm not dead. So if this person yells at me, it hurts me, I'm going to come home. I know what to expect. If I've got this loss and it's holding me back, I can continue to sit in victim status and say, this is hurting me, this is hurting me. I would, but I can't. It's actually an illusion of comfort. Even though the pain is vicious and very real, there's a comfortable place to sit. Now, how do we jump from that place of victim mindset to, and we can go through the 4 phases that I talk about. I always talk about victim, sophomore, savior, and player. And victim being in the space where I can't get past this. You don't understand my situation. This is horrible. And it's a space that we choose. And no one has to leave that. Like you or I'd say, I'm not criticizing a person from sitting there. You might spend your entire life in this round there, and maybe that's what you need right now. But if you choose, the next place that most of us jump to is we jump to that sophomore. And I use the word sophomore. Some people call it perpetrator. I call it sophomore because it's the wise fool. We think this is the end of the game. Now I'm in a space where I can say, okay, I'm going to go fill this space. I'm going to do this stuff. I'm going to move past this. I'm a hero. And our heroic journey now we think is over, and we look back at the victim and say, well, come with me, whatever, what's wrong with you? And we want to point fingers at them saying how bad they are because we figured it out. But what we haven't done is we've never turned towards the light and gone towards something better. Now the next phase is the teacher, the coach, it's the savior. We're going to sit here and we're going to say, all right, guys, I got through my problems and I know all the answers, and come follow me, and come victims, come now. You have to do it today. And we tell everybody what to do. But the problem is when you say to somebody, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, you might as well just stop talking, because by saying that, they're going to go deeper wherever they are. So if they're the sophomore, they'll go deeper. If they're the victim, they'll go deeper. And so the answer, as you and I, Chris, talk about, is you get to the player mode, be the light, so that people can't help but go, holy shit, that's a bright light. I want to go towards that. And then when the victim's saying, I can't, instead of you saying, you have to come with me, they're going, hey, how did you get out? And you just share your story, which we're sharing now. And hopefully somebody's inspired by it. And hopefully somebody realizes, I'm no different than you. I can come play like you and be part of the light. And so really, to answer that question, like my answer would be get to that player state. I just want people to, first and foremost, realize they don't have to. There's no rules of how this works. You can stay and suffer. You know, I'm looking at some of Jessica's comments. I mean, Laura's comments. You can stay and suffer as long as you want. And that process might take multiple lifetimes for you. That's your choice. But I think it's somebody in player mode, at the very least, shine bright enough so people realize there's another way.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Makes absolute sense. I want to grab some of these comments. Laura Cobb. Oh my God, you're writing a book. What's up, Laura? Thank you very much. You are in the Robert Brooker status tonight. Where's Robert? Where is Robert? What's going on? What's going on? So thank you for your comments. Pamela Aubrey's in the house. She says such great points. Moving forward, a major loss can be so challenging. Yes, it can absolutely be challenging. Margaret says, thank you for being here, by the way, Pamela. Margaret says sometimes we take our feelings out on ourselves, awareness, allowing, and love versus giving up. Oh, some insight there, Margaret. I love it. I love it. I love it. Yes, Laura says, you know, she talks about, yes, that is suffering. And let's see, Laura has got quite a bit going on here. She says, no, Christopher. Okay. Margaret has got, I often thought that some people have given up on their lives during COVID. Sometimes it's getting through the day. Absolutely. And sometimes that's what you do. I mean, I've guided people. I've guided myself. Like, I just got to get through the next few hours. I just got to get through today. Tomorrow's going to be a new day. I'm going to feel better tomorrow. Things are going to be different tomorrow. Tomorrow I get to wake up with a new intention. Of course, you know, sometimes it's just getting through those moments of.
And that was Laura's point too. Just one breath at a time, one moment at a time.
Yep. And then Nellie says here, she goes, but sometimes we make ourselves suffer more than we have to, and we don't realize what we are doing. Yes. Can't see the picture if you're in the frame. But at some point we have to know about self-care and self-betterment to know how to grow out of it. Yes. Nellie. So beautiful. So beautiful. We got Jessica in the house. Jessica Marie, she says, oops, where'd it go? Yeah, Jessica, you are dealing with loss at the moment. Definitely. She says, I'm having a real hard time coping at the loss of my cat. It's the emptiness and loss of a routine that's hurting me the most. Absolutely. Absolutely. Scott just mentioned that. You said something important, Scott. You said structure, right? So many of us have built a structure because of that certainty. Like when I was looking over at my dry erase board and I was thinking about that certainty. When we lose something, it's like I lost the certainty of that's a part of my routine. That's a part of what I'm going to do every day. How do I fill that up? Absolutely. And Susan says, love you, Jessica. You know, I mean, what do we say? What do we say to the individuals in those situations, like what Jessica's going through?
Yeah. And that's a perfect thing to think about too, and I think we're talking about the right things for her. So the piece is like, one of the things when you lose a pet, first and foremost, that's a child. You know, if you're somebody who doesn't have children and that pet's been with you for 20 years, 15, 20 years, that's a child that you just put through college, essentially. You know, you just went through that whole time span. So the biggest thing I think that has to be looked at is one of the things that, like, people talk about grief. Grief is actually however much you love something, once that ability for you to love and share that love is gone. So that being is not there, so you can't physically love it. The grief is the amount of love you put into it. So this is what I would say to Jessica or anybody who's feeling this. One of the most beautiful things you can think about is, if you really are feeling sad, think about your capacity to love, because the ability for you to love an animal or a child or an individual for 20 years and make that part of your routine, that every day you share love and you give part of yourself with intention to that being, you're going to have a reciprocal effect of that. When that being is no longer physically here, you feel like you poured that love in, so that love almost leaves. But here's the reality. That love that you were sharing was a capacity of your love. So when we're talking about that free open space, when you were sharing that love, that was coming back from her cat Cleo. So it's kind of like an infinity loop. It's just passing back and forth. Now what you're going to do is redirect that love, and you feel hollow because you're like, but that love's supposed to be for Cleo.
Right.
And fully understandable, but think of the beauty. Cleo helped you amplify that love to share with someone or something. So now take that, find the space that you're going to share that, know that Cleo is still part of that infinite love loop, and share that. And that would be the only thing that I could do. And also Chris's point of routine, structure, whatever, figure out how you can fill the voids in that structure. So maybe it's, I don't know, whatever you want to do to fill the voids of that structure, fill the voids. But that infinity loop of love does not die or move on with the physical being of Cleo moving on. Definitely.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, and I look at it the same way. I remember I've had to put so many different animals down, put them to sleep. And for me, it's always been the situation where I do it is somebody's always told me, like, they'll tell you in their eyes when they're ready. And so, I mean, I put my dog Bella down to sleep. I mean, it's so many different animals, and I walk through that process. And for me, as soon as it's over, usually when I leave the veterinary clinic, it's this thing that I start doing immediately right away. I envision them being free. I see them being free. Like with the case of my dog Bella, I was so immediately crushed and heartbroken. I was just like, oh my God, you're not giving up. And I just knew. And I walked outside one day and I looked at her and she just looked at me and I was like, all right, girl. And I took her there and we went through the process. I'm always in the room with them. And, she passed and she was peaceful, and she was in so much pain. And I got on the freeway and I remember this, and I didn't even deliberately do it. I just looked over at the side of the freeway and I saw her running on the side of the freeway my entire way home. It wasn't something even intentional. I just saw her. And I'm like, babe, you're going to laugh at me right now. Cause she always laughs at me. And I said, I feel like I see Bella running on the side of the freeway. Like I can run. I'm free. And when we think about, I get chills when I think about this, when we think about the connectedness of what we are, we're a meat suit. We're a soul having a human existence. I believe their souls having their type of existence. I have this kind of weird thing that I think you have, there's a path that you go through. And I've heard the story that dogs are dogs because they're studying humans to become human in their next life. So when we think about that possibility of that, okay, I'm going through this experience to learn something, that we really don't lose them. Yes, we lose the physicality of them. But for me, what it did is it opened my heart. At some point I thought, okay, I'm never going to love a dog like this again. She's my baby, and it's, this is going to be the only special one. And then a couple of weeks later, my wife is like looking on the internet at dogs, and she's like, this is the dog, this little puppy with these eyes. And I'm like, no, it's too soon. We have to respect Bella. She's like, let's just please go look at him. And long story short, I have Ozzy, and Ozzy's like an extension of my body. I mean, Bella was too, but it's just amazing when we have that opportunity and almost that joyful curiosity of what's going to be the next opportunity in my life to love and lose, but to really gain a deeper sense and meaning of what this life really is.
And that's all beautiful. And I love the fact of how organically Ozzy pops into existence, and the universe always does what is needed when ready. And I just want to just check real quick. Glenda said some really, nice things. I see her sharing, and she was saying that she's had a lot of losses in July. So, thank you for sharing, Glenda, and hopefully we're supporting you and helping you. Laura and Jessica were also commenting too. I really want to sit on this thing for a minute because I think it's important. Think of your grief and everything you're feeling right now. Feel it. So here's what I would suggest. And I was fortunate enough to do a presentation a few years back on grief in North Carolina to a bunch of caregivers. And I was just talking about some similar stuff in Daytona. Was it last month to a group of caregivers too. But think of grief as a beautiful springboard. So imagine this. Imagine that, you're jumping on a trampoline, or you're a gymnast and you're running, about to hit that springboard, and you're going to get some amazing elevation. It's an equal opposite. So right now, if you're about to jump, if you're about to start that run, feel that. Because, so watch this. If you just walk up to the springboard and say, I'm sad, and step on it, nothing happens. So you lost your ability to love because you didn't process the grief. Does that make sense? So imagine I walk up real gently, I stand on the trampoline, and I just stand there. Why am I not flying in the air? But if I go boom, 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 all of a sudden I take off. If I start running and I hit that springboard, I'm going to fly in the air. So process the shit out of what you're feeling. If somebody says, don't cry, it's just a cat, or don't cry, or, there's more important, whatever people are saying, shut up. Do everything that you need to do to process. Look at the pictures, watch the videos, listen to the music, bawl your eyes out, feel it, feel it, feel it, feel it, feel it. That is your run up to the springboard. That's you bouncing like a mofo on that on that trampoline. And then the equal opposite, when you're in the air and you're flying again, that was created by the love of that being. That was created by that which you did before. That's living. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, it does. Yes, it does. Glenda says, thank you all. Thank you all. Laura says, what's it? She says, Nellie says, yes, Laura, love fills every void and replenishes life. Absolutely. Laura says here, when I love more, there is no loss. Absolutely. Absolutely. Glenda says here, I had a child dog and saw here ghost. I get it. Absolutely. We got Jacqueline in the house. What's up, Jacqueline? Good to see you. Happy Friday night. She says, since my father died, I was 9 in 1966. Nothing much has gone right for me. Don't think I've ever been truly happy. Wow.
I would say to you, Jacqueline, and this is again, there's no perfect way to explain this, but what I just said, maybe you haven't fully felt that. Like start like run towards it, bounce, take those big steps. Process the grief. There's so many of us that for some reason didn't process something. And if you don't process it, let's say I have a bunch of grief or hurt, that becomes weight. And so you still can release that in the run up to that springboard. You still can. It's never too late. So I would explore ways to do that, through coaching, through meditation, through just sitting in a room and crying, screaming into a pillow. Do what you have to do, but release that weight and allow yourself to start bouncing again and just spread and feel the love that you've got inside.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I have a couple of ideas as well I'm going to share here in just a minute, but Laura says, run towards the mofo. Absolutely. Monique is in the house. She is sharing. She says, my aunt passed in March and my mom is still sad and I see her hurt every day and I'm trying to keep her happy and busy. I am looked out as one of who just have to keep it moving so I don't get a chance to be in my feelings. I know some of my family sees me as a person with no feelings, but they never see that because I am the responsible one, left in charge of everything. I don't get a chance to grieve. None of them think I grieve because I just keep going on with life. Is that a healthy way to go, Scott?
No, Monique, honestly, I have somebody that I'm working with right now that I'm coaching with the same exact thing. And she keeps saying, I need. And here's the thing. Certain personality types are controllers. When I say we, I'm including myself in this group. Chris would probably do much of the same. We see things we want to control. We want to say, I'm going to take care of you, and you will implode. You'll have some kind of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Crash.
Yeah, crash. I was looking for when you have a disease that ends up, taking like cancer and stuff like that. Eventually, get a diabetes or cancer, debilitating like long-term disease. These things will end up eating you up. I would highly suggest, even if it's somebody in your family that doesn't typically see that side of you, let them know that you're hurting. Feel it. If you start bawling and crying, grab somebody, just let it go, own it, be there, because you can't contain that indefinitely. I mean, you can't. So please don't. Do yourself the favor. Give yourself the gift of processing, because that processing, like I was just saying, is what's going to allow you to live again and be the support mechanism. If you really want to be the support mechanism, you have to process your feelings. You have to. So
you can't pour from an empty bucket that's got holes in it, Monique. What's up with that? You cannot do that. So here's one of the suggestions that I have for people that I've done myself. It's kind of a two-parter. One of them is that somebody dies or something dies suddenly, you don't have a chance to make amends with it. Is I suggest writing a letter, right? Sitting down and writing. I've written letters to past people who have died. I've written letters to animals who have died. And did I freeze? I may have froze. Did I freeze?
Yeah, you're back.
Did I freeze?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, my internet keeps changing from wired to Wi-Fi. I'm like, what the fuck? There's been weird electrical shit going on for like the last week. Weird shit just keeps happening with everything electrical around me. We talked about that.
Yeah.
But anyways, what I do is I write a letter to, so what I'm missing, I write a letter to it. Like I wrote a letter to my mom, my mentor, my cat, my dog. I've done that as well, just to kind of get out that grief and to say my apologies and to just really get everything out. But in the same respect, I've also done this as well, as I've written a letter from the person that's gone, from their voice telling me to get on with my life, because we all know, like we talked to spouses, like I've talked, me and my wife have talked, like if we die, we want each other to go on and be happy. But what's the first thing we do? Oh, I can't go on. I'll never go on. I'll never meet anybody else. But that one person said, no, listen, I'm dead serious. Don't waste time. You're going to have an amazing life. My life was cut short. Go out there and live and love your life. And people don't necessarily do that. So when you write a letter from somebody, write it in their words. What would they say to you? What would they really say to you? And take heart to that information. Let it flow out of you. Actually physically write it out and let source, God, creator, whatever it is, your own soul, let that come out, because there's answers and there's golden gems in there. You ever did anything like that, Scott?
I absolutely love that. I fully love that. Can you hear me? Did I break up?
Yeah. My internet keeps changing.
No,
No, you're good.
I can't say enough about that, because we even talk about empathy, like being empathetic, like getting in somebody else's shoes. Get in that person's shoes and do that, because here's what we do. We're not truly saying, oh my God, that person's gone, or that being is gone. It's always about, what did it take away from me, my structure, my friend, the person who always listened to me, the person I spent time with. What about the long walks on the beach? Like, what would that person really want? And there's very few people that I'm close to that would say, I want you to be miserable. I want your life to suck. I want you to pout. I want you to say that I can never go on without that person. There's no one who would. So I would say that simple genius. And let's answer Sherry's question, because that might be the answer to the question. It says, my best friend, Sherry McQueen wrote, my best friend of over 30 years just buried her 26-year-old son. He was like a nephew to me. Any advice for the family? Chris, talk about what you just said plugged into that, because that sounds like some simple genius. It's amazingly sad. No one wants to do that, but your advice might be some of the genius that helps that process.
Yeah, boy, that's. I mean, when you get into the loss of a child, I mean, that's something that even I like go, okay, I could talk about a lot of things, but when I sit there and I think about my own, if I lost my son, I mean, when people say, I don't know if I can go on, I'm like, okay, I know I would have to, and I know I would. But yeah, I mean, in that respect, I mean, there's that opportunity to what was he about? What was his vision? What was his drive? What was his attitude about? How did he make the world a better place? What was it that he did that he impacted you with? And how can you give meaning and purpose to that? Whether it's a nonprofit fund, whether it's a donation in his name, whether it's an advocacy group that fights on behalf of something that he might have been involved with. But at the same time, for me, and this is going to be totally somewhat insensitive, but when I lose something, I sit there and I think about, okay, what is it that for me that I find that I need to replace, right? And immediately we think we need to replace it with something, but the fact is that we can actually just be in the moment with the fact of the blessing of that 26 years of that person being in there, and all the different joys and all the different amazing moments that you did get that experience to have. I mean, sometimes those days are only 2 or 5 years that people get to have their kids. So when I think about that 26-year longevity, I mean, yes, it's obviously catastrophic, and I couldn't even imagine myself going through that. But finding the hope and finding the promise in what that person really lived for and what it is that they want to accomplish, and being able to have some sort of hand in executing that, carries on that memory and carries on that tradition, at least for me. What do you think, Scott? I mean, that's a tough one.
So yeah, and so I've written my own eulogy as part of exercises that I give coaching clients, and one of the things that I try to do is figure out what is it in that individual that individual would want to live on forever, because none of us live forever. So let's say, for example, that, part of my brilliance, or that individual's brilliance, was always making people laugh. What I would do is I would make sure that I'm not going to be somebody who now is never having fun, because that person's whole vision and whole existence and brilliance was they walk into a room, make people laugh. So if we all start going, I can't smile anymore, then you literally allow that person to die forever. So I would carry that laughter on. If it's a person who, always said we should read more books because books are, I would be the person who's like, what's the next book? What's the next book? So I would take those pieces of that person that can live indefinitely, and I would bring them into me and amplify the heck out of them so I can share them. And, maybe a simple thing might be to do is embrace the grieving process. Like Chris said, 26 years of all the beauty, and really investigate, who was this person? Is there something that we missed collectively? Tell us all the beautiful things, put those things on paper, have a celebration of life, take those things, and then say, I'm going to take these things that they showed me and make sure they live on forever in me. So now there's not one of these people, there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 20 of these people spreading all this infinite beauty of everything they brought to the table even further. So again, the physical, I get it. All these people who love that person, that doesn't it's going to be hard. But if you don't allow the best qualities of who that person was to ever die, you've just said that person is infinite. So Sherry, hopefully that helps. But I would try to explore something like that. Maybe be the person who sets up that celebration of life where you share all the stories and say, how can we keep these stories happening and make that person live on forever?
Mm-hmm. Another thing I've seen people do that I haven't done yet is they'll write a book of like specific lessons, especially when they're parents. Like I've told people like they've lost their parents in situations like we have here. We're talking about is dad's top 10 pieces of advice, and write out some sort of blog or write out some sort of book so that advice is always cemented in forever history, right? Or print it out and say, give it to your kids and say, this is grandpa's advice for a solid life. Continuing on those moments and having those meanings really does it all. Not one thing. I think what Scott and I are also trying to say is not one thing is going to be the magic pill. It really is about, okay, what is it that I'm going to do first thing in the morning? First thing in the morning, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to say what I'm grateful for, because we all have so much to be grateful for, even in the darkest and the worst of times. We always have something to be grateful for, number one. Number two, what is my intention for the day? And this is something that we need to carefully consider. You and I talk about it all the time, Scott. If we wake up and ask ourselves, okay, what's my intention for the day? If we say out loud, my intention for today is to be miserable, or my intention today is to be sad all day, then what is it that we're going to do? We're going to fulfill that intention. But if we sit there and wake up and say, you know what, my intention today is to get through the day as best as I can, living and cherishing all the positive moments that I had with that person and using their strength to get me through today. Reframing that opportunity to say, okay, listen, if so-and-so was here right now, what piece of advice would they give me through the day? Bill White would always say, Christopher, you're only limited by the parameters of your own mind. I'm like, okay, so how can I live today expanding the parameters of my mind? How can I, maybe pick up a book about, afterlife and maybe try to understand that a little bit better? Maybe I could pick up a book on psychics and mediums, and maybe there's an opportunity to have a conversation there. Or, maybe I could sit there and look at my own kids and look at the own people in my life and say, okay, listen, how can I use that legacy to impact the people in my life right now and continue that on for myself? It's such a tough thing. It's such a tough subject for us to all address. Monique says here, she says, when my dad passed, I walked in and he was on the floor. My brother walked in and said, Monique, got it, and walked out. She says the worst feeling ever. And she goes on to say, thank you, Monique, for sharing. She goes, every day I'm so thankful for my mom, and I just want to see her smile again. I mean, it's so true. It's so true. I mean, I was helping with somebody recently who lost their husband, and there was nothing literally I could say that person was holding on to, that they're not going to get better. They're not going to be able to live. They're not going to be able to cope. And I was like, I can't argue if you already made up your mind. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. Monique, Margaret says here, she goes, great coaching today from you both, in the zone, helping and bringing value. Thank you. No, thank you so much, Margaret. I mean, we're just here sharing from our heart, to inspire you guys. I mean, so many people are going through so much pain and everything else. It is crazy. And Sherry comes back and says, he was so happy about life, making everyone laugh. He gave unconditional love to everyone, an amazing soul. So there's the nugget right there. There's the nugget to carry on that tradition, can carry on that family, or to carry on his legacy, is unconditional love. How can we sit there and ask ourselves, I'm judging people, or I'm fearful in this situation? We can actually sit there and look about unconditional love. What are your thoughts on unconditional love, Scott? Does it sound too crazy to say I have unconditional love?
So let's actually talk about a past guest for a second. So we had a friend of mine. What's my Bill Clinton buddy? You ever just blank? What's my friend who looks like Bill?
Harold, Todd.
John Harrell. So my buddy John Harrell, one of his good friends, his daughter was the first person killed in Columbine.
Was it John Harrell?
It's John Harrell, yeah. So John Harrell was actually one of his good friends. His daughter was one of the first people who was killed. I think the first person shot by that killer in the Columbine deal in Colorado. So he did exactly what we were talking about. He went and just looked at all the beautiful things from Rachel's life, and he talked about that she was somebody who was just unconditionally loved people, and she was someone who would go into the cafeteria, and if someone was sitting alone, even though she was the most popular kid, she'd be like, come sit with me, and just bring groups together. And that's who she was. And whether it's a coincidence or not, she was the first person who was shot in that. And so he created something called Rachel's Challenge. And Rachel's Challenge is a program they go into schools, very similar to what I was doing with Go Love Now. It's saying to people, love unconditionally, and unconditional love starts here first. You cannot love somebody else unconditionally until you fall in love with yourself. And we have this disillusionment with that we think that's an ego thing, like, oh, I'm so awesome, whatever. No. We're not saying that. We're saying if we're, universe created, creator created, God created, we have divinity within us. So why are we not loving ourselves enough to share our brilliance with existence? And so the minute we do that and love ourselves enough, the byproduct of that is unconditional love. Now, does that mean that we accept evil, we accept bad behaviors? No, it means unconditional love and empathy for the reality that that person went through different experiences than me. Does it piss me off they're doing it? Does that make no sense? Are they in their own way all the time? Are they causing all kinds of trouble? Will I call them on some things? I'm not saying I'm not doing that, but I unconditionally love all beings, understanding that we're all one collective, and that if I do say something, hopefully what I'm saying is helping to better them as part of this collective so we can all love more, if that makes sense. So it's a catchy, tricky thing to use the word unconditional love, because, we could sit here and start throwing out like names of people and go, do you unconditionally love them? And we're going to go, well,
I've only got a few names.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm sure we could come up with a few, but I think at the end of the day is we're all human beings. We're doing our best. We're on individual journeys. If you're blessed to be higher up in the ladder, rather than hate the other, keep you in the light so that victim can take steps forward to catch up to you.
Yes. Jacqueline says, thank you so much, Christopher and Scott, for all you do. You help me so much, and so many other people so much. Thank you. That's what we love. Glenda has great advice here. She goes, accept them where they're at. Yes, sometimes they're in their journey, and that's something that both Scott and I have talked about here on the show is, sometimes you want so much for somebody else to kind of get it, and you just have to respect and understand that that's the journey that they are on. We have a new arrival, Andrea Porenta Mulati. What's up, Andrea? Good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Wow, Scott, we've had an impactful conversation here. I think when I thought about this episode, in truth, obviously we know that I've been dealing with the loss of my cat, not to the extent of what Jess has gone through, but my cat of about a year and a half, Whiskers. And as crazy as it is, he was an indoor-outdoor cat. We bonded. He showed up here the day Buster passed away, my other cat. It was like he showed up and said, hey, listen, guys, I got to be here for you. And through that relationship, he's an outdoor cat. So I was like, okay, I want to keep him inside. I want to keep him safe. But his personality and everything about him was like, I'm an outdoor cat. You're not going to keep me inside. I'll come inside and I'll hang out in here, but I'm an outdoor cat. And then, we would let him out. And there was a few times where he would get out at night. And I was like, okay, is he going to be okay? Coyotes, he would always be back in the first thing in the morning, right there by the sliding glass door. Like, hey, I'm sorry. I missed cuddle time and everything. And he used to sleep with me. He used to sleep with my wife, or sleep with my kid. All the stories I used to tell about him. And then a week ago, Monday, I walked out and looked in the back door expecting him to be there, and he wasn't there. And I was like, oh, he'll be back later. And I would go out there and I'd shake the can. I'm like, he always comes back. Where is he? He's going to come back. Okay. It's been a few days. And the thing of it was for me, and this is why I want to share this with you guys, because whether it's a cat, whether it's a person, whatever it might be, what I did was, and this is the truth, and this is the full disclosure on it, is I shake the can Monday night when he was gone, and he came back and he came to the front door. And normally his trick was, okay, I'll come inside if you give me treats. And my trick was like, you come inside first and then I'll give you treats. And that night I was in a bad mood. I was frustrated. And I was just like, okay, come on, Whiskers, get inside. Come on, let's go. I got things to do. Jackson was upstairs doing something. I needed to run upstairs. And he just sat there and looked at me. And I was like, listen, you dick, just get inside. I know you're playing a game. Get in here. And the fucked up thing about it, Scott, was I was sitting there having a conversation with a cat that the cat was playing a game with me. So I closed the door. And I was like, normally, I'll go back and I'll open the door. He'll still be there. And I went upstairs and I forgot about everything. And that's where we're at in the story. As I go down the next morning, he's not there. So my last memory is of me looking down at that doorstep and seeing the cat and thinking, okay, I just slammed the door on this soul, this person, this being, this cat, whatever it might be. But the way that I have to personally process it, he doesn't have to process anything. He's just like, okay, the door closed. I'm a cat. I'm going to go find the next meal. I'm going to go chase a frog. Oh, if I get lost, then I'm a cat. I'm on my journey. But the important thing was the way I reacted to it and the way that I made it about me. And the other things that I actually looked at was like, okay, what is this a deeper picture of? right? What is that deeper picture of? And the deeper picture of is that sometimes we think we always have tomorrow. We always think we have another opportunity to make amends or to say I'm sorry or to tell somebody that we really love them. But in the grand scheme of the fact of stuff is sometimes we close the door, whether we do it out of angst or hatred or emotionalism, or we close the door and we say, hey, goodbye, I'll see you tomorrow. We never get that opportunity for that final thing. And I think that's the thing that's been for me is like that life is going by so fast for all of us and time does fly. We're already halfway over with 2021. It's going to be Christmas in a minute. And I think for me, Scott, it was just like a realization that, you know, even as we all get older, we're not always going to have those opportunities to say that to somebody else if we pass. And so I think that's been the emotional wake up call for me is to like really make sure I've said the things that I need to say to people and to close those doors or to end those stories so that that person doesn't have to go back and go, wow, I really wish I would have had that conversation with Chris, or I really wish I would have done those different things. So, you know, I understand that it's all part of the journey and that I'm able to go through that. But at the same time, it's just, for me, it's a wake up call, like just to really embrace and cherish all the different moments that we have with our loved.
You temporarily breaking up.
On that, Mr. Scott.
You're back. You just broke up for a second.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, what are your thoughts on that? I was just kind of like just venting and just kind of just sharing that we all just go through different forms of loss, but there's always a message and a meaning in there for it.
And it's on point. And so I think the simple takeaway and what we can both leave you with is this: make it a routine and make it a habit to end every conversation you have somebody with I love you if you're comfortable, or at the very least a beautiful parting where, you know, this was a nice time together, even if it's not the perfect time, even if there was some argument, try to tie things up a little bit and say, you know, I'll connect with you tomorrow or whatever, or, you know, thanks for being my friend or family member, or whatever it is. And the power in that is insane, because we're all interconnected, and that last message that carries on and carries on and carries on. They do live on forever, and we make mistakes. You know, every single one of us has somebody who we lost in some capacity or broke up with or whatever. And we're like, if I only had said blank, if I only had done blank. We can do this to ourselves all day long. Those are nothing more than opportunities to be beautiful lessons for us to finally get them and not do it again. So take that as a lesson. You know, again, Chris would do this a million times over, as crazy as it sounds. He'll be the lesson. Like, it's so will I. We'll be the lesson. We'll take the loss and be the lesson so that you guys can learn from it. So if you've got a kitty, or if you've got a loved one, or whoever it is, go tell them you love them, bring them inside, give them 2 treats, do what you got to do. And that's all we can say. So we love you guys.
Yes. Thank you, Brother Scott. Yes. Jessica says, so sorry about your kitty, Chris. He sounds like the best cat. Yes. I mean, they're all amazing cats. It's all part of the process. I mean, look back at the year and a half. I have 736 pictures of this cat in a year. And what he's taught me about independence and rocking your own bad self. I mean, I'm actually putting together a video trilogy just to kind of give his life meaning. I'm not saying that he's gone. I mean, I think he's going to saunter back in a month and be like, yeah, you're going to get the treat this time. You know, he's such a badass. He's going to be like, did I make you sweat? You know, and if he doesn't come back, he doesn't come back, as long as he's getting love from somebody else.
If he does come back, dude, he's building up a stack of treats. That guy's got game.
Yeah. It's so true. But yeah, we appreciate each and every one of you guys being here. Sherry says, thank you both for the advice. I will definitely share this with the family. Love and light. Yes, love and light to you. Glenda says, I can do same thing. He disappeared because he got because another took up with me and 6 kittens to say goodbye. Ooh, that is tough. Jacqueline says here, she goes, you guys are the real deal. No fluff, no lies, no sugar coated bullshit. Thank you, God, for you too, Poncho and Lefty. Well, we love you guys. We're always here on the Unfiltered Experience every Friday night, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So put it in your calendar. We've got some great shows continuing to come up for you guys as well. So anyways, final parting thoughts, Mr. Goyette, before we enter into this 4th of July weekend here in the United States.
I'm going to do exactly what we've been preaching. I'm going to tell everybody here we love you, and I expect to see you again next Friday. But just in case I don't, we've parted with an I love you. Share that with everybody else you know, and that's all I'd like to say.
Awesome, brother. Awesome. I say the same thing. We love each and every one of you. Go out there and be the change you want to see. Start by loving yourself first, filling your own cup, pouring from that bucket that doesn't have holes in it. for the right reasons, for the right legacy that you want to leave. Cherish each and every single moment that you get. When you're living life in those moments, like as soon as I cut off from here, I'm going to sit here for about 2 minutes. I'm going to say, I'm going to go into dad mode. I'm going to go into playful mode. I'm not going to go into thinking mode about anything else. I'm going to go down there and be the best possible dad I can be, because tonight could be the last opportunity I get to be a dad. And that sometimes sounds negative, but if we live in those moments and we really do say all the things that we need to be said, then chances are when we get to go with more of a smile on our face than a regret on our heart. So we love each and every one of you guys. We'll see you. Have a safe 4th of July. Have a great weekend. And we love you guys from the Unfiltered Experience. Cheers.